All right. Moving on through Goethe's Faust here. We are at the next scene. And here's Peter Stein's play again. I'll just let the images run for the scene. I couldn't find a good image to illustrate this part, which is called, it's translated as Pleasance, Morning Sun. And here the Emperor, you can see him here in white, is talking to both Faust and Mephistopheles. And I want to read this scene because I think there's a lot in it. Faust says, "Your pardon, sire, the pyromantic sport." He had just blown up the stage in the carnival scene. And the Emperor says, "Now, I would have more amusement of this sort. I once stood in a fiery sphere. I almost fancied I was Pluto here." And now the reference to Pluto is interesting because this is a reference to the geological theory of volcanism. So the Emperor talks about being in a fiery sphere, and then Mephistopheles will counter it with an underwater kingdom that they could rig up for him if he wanted, which is, of course, the geological theory of Neptunism, that the Earth's crust is formed slowly. And this is the side that Goethe preferred, despite being German, because most Germans are catastrophists in favor of the volcanist hypothesis. But Goethe realizes that both hypotheses are relevant, that the Earth's crust was also the formation of sudden volcanic eruptions, hence igneous rocks, just as well as sedimentary rocks that are formed slowly by water over time. So the Emperor continues, "Of night and cold there yawned a rocky gorge, aglow with lights. From this or that hot forge a myriad raging flames whirled ever higher and flared into a wall, a vault of fire. Into the loftiest sky dome it was raised, which ever faded as it ever blazed. Far off through twisted fiery trunks and steeples I saw the endless moving files of peoples in serried concourse press to where I stood, and render homage as they always would. I recognized a courtier now and then. Of thousand salamanders seemed my reign." And of course the salamander is a mythological image of fire. And Mephistopheles counters then with the counter realm underwater, and he says, "You rule them, sire, for every element owes majesty unquestioning assent. You sampled now the fire's obedient ravage. Next plunge into the sea at its most savage, and scarcely do you tread its pearly ground, when all about you forms a glorious round." And note, too, that the Emperor is really more interested in entertainment and amusement than in ruling. He's letting the kingdom go to hell, so he's not a very good ruler. He's a new one, he's inexperienced, he doesn't really know what he's doing. Here he is in the play here talking to the actor that I love, who's cast as Mephistopheles, and there's Bruno Ganz as Faust. Excellent casting in that play. "When all about you forms a glorious round, for undulating Nile green swells, upwelling with coral edges, mold a splendor dwelling with you for center. Every step you do, the glassy palaces advance with you." So Mephistopheles is proposing the construction of an underwater, kind of a Disneyland entertainment, almost like the old Disneyland ride of the submarine. You get in the submarine and it takes you underwater. It's a fake underwater, of course. "Alive the very confines of your shelter with darting swarms, a glistening cross-laced welter, the mild new gleam draws portents of the ocean. They bound and lunge, the walls arrest their motion. Gold dragons sport, prismatic scales and claws. There gapes a shark, you laugh into his jaws. How much your court may teem with fond dependence. You've never had such thronging of attendants. Yet they will not impede the loveliest view. Inquisitive young Nereids press too against the crystal carapace's limit. The youngest fish-like, curious and timid, the elder wise. Soon Thetis," and of course Thetis is the mother of Achilles, she was a sea goddess, "grants the new Peleus," Achilles' father, who was human, whereas Thetis was a goddess, "her salute and kiss. Forthwith, a seat on Mount Olympus fair." And the Emperor says, "I'll let you off the regions of the air. One reaches all too soon that lofty birth." So they're going through the four elements here, and the Emperor tells him not to bother with the air. And then Mephistopheles finishes with the earth by saying, "And you, great sire, already have the earth." So that's all four elements. And it's funny, I think that Mephistopheles is proposing the creation of kind of Disneyland amusement park, theme park for the Emperor. Goethe is very, very prescient about the coming unfolding of Western technologies throughout the 20th century. And the Emperor says, "What pleasing turn of fate has brought you here? Straight from Arabian Nights, it would appear. If you have Scheherazad's rich invention, I pledge you my most generous attention. Stand ever ready when the world of day, as it as oft it does, seems made of loathly clay. So he wants them to entertain him with these stage theatrics every day. And then the marshal comes running in and says, "Exalted sire, in all my days to this, I never hoped to tell of higher bliss. Then what, most seasonably gay, sends me before your throne today, account upon account is squared. The usurer's talons have been pared. I'm rid of such infernal care that heaven could not seem more fair." Then the quartermaster rushes in. "Paid in advance the soldiers due. The army's all been pledged anew. The man-at-arms feels born all over. Mine host and wenches are in clover." And the emperor says, "How does your breath come deep and free? The furrowed face all wreathed in glee. How briskly now you cross the hall." Then the treasurer comes in. "Inquire of these to whom we owe it all." Faust. The hall reports the chancellors to render, and then the chancellor comes in. "Whose waning years are gilded with new splendor. See then and hear ye the momentous screed, which turned all woe to happiness indeed." So he unfolds this screed here, and you can see the chancellor here in this scene reading it, where he says, "To all it may concern upon our earth, this paper, namely money," and apparently paper currency, you can see him holding it up here, was invented in the 18th century, and it caused destabilizations in France in particular, and also especially during the French Revolution, it caused runaway inflation. And he says, "This paper is 1,000 guilders worth. There lies, sure warrant of it, and full measure, beneath our earth a wealth of buried treasure." So they're borrowing against this buried treasure that Mephistopheles says is in the earth, but they haven't dug it up yet. I don't think they ever do, actually. "Beneath our earth a wealth of buried treasure. As for this wealth, the means are now in train to raise it and redeem the scrip again." The emperor says, "I sense gross fraud here, blasphemous counterfeit. Who dared to forge the emperor's name and writ? Has no one thought to punish such a crime?" And the treasurer says, "Recall, your own self signed it at the time only last night. You stood in great Pan's mask, and with the chancellor we approached to ask. Allow yourself high festive joy and nourish the common weal with but a pen's brief flourish. You signed. That night by men of 1,000 arts the thing was multiplied 1,000 parts, so that like blessing should to all accrue. We stamped up all the lower series too, 10s, 30s, 50s, hundreds did we edit. The good it did, folk, you would hardly credit. Your city, else half molded in stagnation, now teems, revived in prosperous elation. Although your name has long been widely blessed, it's not been spelt with such fond interest. The alphabet has now been proved redundant. In this sign, everyone finds grace abundant." And so now notice a couple of things here. One is that apparently the emperor has no memory of signing this decree to go ahead and introduce paper currency, because he did it either while he was drunk during the carnival or somehow he was distracted. He was dressed up as Pan, but they got him to sign it. And now note that how that mirrors in Faust Part 1 in the early scenes, Faust signing the contract with Mephistopheles. Here the emperor has signed a contract with Mephistopheles. So he too now has a Faustian contract with Mephistopheles. The second thing to notice is that they created a printing press to print up all the money. And of course, in a certain sense, Faust is set in two different time periods. Goethe's time in the 18th century when paper currency was invented, but the historical Faust lived shortly, right around 1500. He was born in 1480, and the printing press was invented by Gutenberg in 1436. So this is about the time of the invention of the printing press. And so note here, as part 2 unfolds, Mephistopheles introduces one technological creation after the next. Now we have paper money. Now we have the printing press. And then so it goes on. The emperor says, "It circulates like gold of true essay? The court, the army, take it in full pay? I scarce believe it, though you say I ought." And the marshal tells him, "The fugitives could never now be caught. The stuff was scattered broadside in a wink. The money changers' benches groan and clink. Each single sheet is honored in their court in gold and silver. Though a trifle short, to butcher baker in, it next flits down. Just feasting seems to busy half the town. The other half show off their fine new clothes. The draper cuts the bolt, the tailor sews. Here sellers toast the emperor, barrels plashing, there waiters jostle, steaming platters clashing." And so all the nobles are on a spending spree all through the town. They're drinking better wine. They're going to brothels, having sex probably with better looking prostitutes, and they're just spending. Mephistopheles says coolly, You roam the terraces alone, it happens, and meet a beauty decked in costly trappings. One eye by haughty peacock feathers hidden, the other winks. And note the peacock reference there. We've already seen the Cauda Pavonis of alchemy prefigured in the opening scene of part 2 with the rainbow. Here a girl has it adorning her outfit. One eye by haughty peacock feathers hidden, the other winks by such a voucher bidden. More swiftly than by turn of speech or wit, the ritual wars of love are lured by it. One is no longer plagued by purse or package. A note borne next the heart is easy baggage. It aptly couples there with love epistles. It in priestly breviaries it chastely nestles. The soldier too, for ease of hips and loins, may now discard the ponderous belt of coins. Your highness, pardon, if this stately matter I seem to slander by such lowly chatter. Faust says, the plethora of treasure which congealed, the depths of your dominions hold concealed, lies unexploited. Concept most immense is to such wealth a negligible fence. Imagination in its loftiest flight will not encompass it, strain as it might. Yet spirits gifted with profoundest sense place in the boundless confidence. Mephistopheles says, such currency in gold and jewels place is neat. It bears its value on its face. One may without much bargaining or barter inflame oneself with Bacchus, Venus ardor, that is to say wine and women. If metal's wanted, there's the banker's pile. If he falls short, one digs a little while. Gold dish and jewelry are auctioned off. The paper validated soon enough disarms the wag who with his darts would stab it. They ask for nothing else now, it's a habit. Henceforth the crown lands guard an ample store of specie, gems, and scrip, as not before. So now the emperor says, the empire owes you signal benefit. May the reward be of a kind with it. Receive the empire's inner soil in fief, its treasures fit custodians in chief. You know the hoards, far-flung and well-protected. When digging's to be done, you shall direct it. Unite chiefs of my surface and subsurface, rejoice to clothe with dignity your office, as upper now and nether world, elate in close-bound harmony, collaborate. The treasurer says, there shall not be the faintest breath of trouble. I cherish a magician for my double. The emperor says, I'll grant a gift to everyone at court. What will they use it for? Let each report. A page says, I'll live as gaily as in paradise. Another says, I'm off to buy my love a chain and locket. The chamberlain says, from now on I drink wine at twice the price. Another says, my word, the dice are itching in my pocket. A baron says, I'll clear of debt my manor house and field. Another says, I'll lay it by, more interest to yield. So all these people in the court are going to squander all of this paper currency on very transient, ephemeral pleasures. And the emperor says, I hoped for pluck and zest for ventures new. I should have known you and what each would do. For all new bloom of wealth, it's plain to see that each remains just what he used to be. And then, now the fool shows up that Mephistopheles had displaced. And note this joke here about the fool. He says, you deal out favors, let me have a few. The emperor says, so you revived in time to waste these too. Fool, those magic leaves, I cannot grasp them quite. Emperor, no wonder, for you do not use them right. Fool, some more come fluttering down, what should I do? Emperor, well, they fell your way, so let them fall to you. The fool, 5,000 guilders, wondrously collected. And now he's alone with Mephistopheles, who says, wineskin on legs, have you been resurrected? The fool says, been often raised, but never to such profit. Mephistopheles, you're in a sweat with the excitement of it. Fool, look, does this really work in money's stead? Mephistopheles, enough to keep you drunk and overfed. Fool, can house and land and ox be bought for it? And notice that the fool is the only one who decides to convert the currency into tangible things like land and a house that will retain their value after the economy collapses due to runaway inflation. Mephistopheles, why not? Just make your bid and seal a writ. Fool, a hunt, a trout stream, park, and lodge. Mephistopheles, yes, all. I'd love to see you in your manor hall. Fool, this night I dote on deeds of property. Mephistopheles, not every jester is a fool, you see. And this jester isn't. He's the only smart one. And then so we move to Dark Gallery, which is the scene we're looking at here, the conversation between Mephistopheles and Faust, where Faust comes in and he tells him, look, I've promised the emperor to resurrect the shades of Helen of Troy in Paris. You need to help me do this. And he says at first, well, it's kind of out of my power range. Faust says, no, we have to do this. And Mephistopheles says, okay, well, all right, but you're going to have to descend to a realm called the Mothers. And this is something that even Mephistopheles will not have anything to do with. This is the underworld. And Faust says, mothers? And Mephistopheles says, are you awed? Faust says, the mothers. Why, it strikes a singular chord. Mephistopheles, and so it ought. Goddesses undivined by mortals, named with shrinking by our kind. Go delve the downmost for their habitat. Blame but yourself that it has come to that. And Faust says, where's the road? Mephistopheles says, no road. Into the unexceeded, the inaccessible, toward the never pleaded, the never pleadable. How is your mood? There are no locks to probe, no bolts to shift. By desolation's harrowed, you will drift. And so, the mothers. So he has to descend down into the underworld to deal with the mothers. And Mephistopheles gives him a key. And what Faust has to do, and this key he feels enlarging in his hand, like a penis, which is what it's meant to represent, because he has to go down to the womb world, where there's a tripod that stands on 3 legs, representing 3 different goddesses. And he has to touch the key to the tripod, that's an imitation of sex, and from that generate the shades of Paris and Helen, which he then does resurrect, and he brings them back to the court. Now the mothers, Goethe told Eckermann that he got this reference to the mothers from Plutarch's Life of Marcellus, in which he's describing the Roman wars against the Carthaginians, and there's a character there in Sicily, in a town in Sicily, who's on the side of the Carthaginians, and he's worried that the Romans are going to persecute him, and he says, the mothers are after me. And he's referring to the Carthaginian goddesses, because the Carthaginians were goddess worshippers. And so that's where the reference to the mothers comes from. They're ancient goddesses. And note here how Goethe anticipates Bachofen's discovery of mother rights, which he publishes his book in 1861 on Mutterrecht, which is the realm where he figured out that underneath all the world's patriarchal mythologies, there was once an older bedrock, a much earlier mythological stratum of goddesses, in which people used to take the names, not of their fathers, but of their mothers. And he's 100% correct about that. And he adduces volumes of evidence to that effect. Goethe here is already anticipating that discovery. And then so also, Rudolf Steiner's reading of this should be taken into account, which is a bit idiosyncratic. But he says, well, the mothers actually refer to the 3 Greek goddesses, Rhea, Demeter, and Persephone. Rhea was the ancient consort of her brother Kronos, who were born from the union of Gaia and Uranos. And Rhea is an earth goddess like Gaia, and she gives birth to Demeter, who is a grain goddess, and who gives birth then to Persephone, who is the grain. And so those are the mothers, according to Rudolf Steiner. But they also refer, in his cosmology, he says, he has 3 earlier epochs from the Earth epoch, what he calls Old Saturn, Old Sun, and Old Moon. And he says those 3 are mothers, too, of the Earth. The Earth has come out of these 3 previous transformations of the solar system. And he aligns Persephone with Saturn, Demeter with Sun, and Rhea with Moon in reverse order. And he says that what Faust is doing here, and you can see him here with the keys, Mephistopheles has given him the keys. What he's doing here is he's being initiated into the mysteries. And these were the goddesses that the Greeks associated with the mysteries. And he simply drops down into the suprasensory world, the astral plane, basically, where he then becomes a sort of initiate. And when he returns, in the scene after next, he returns, and the astrologer at the court says that he calls him a priest. So now his ontological status has changed. Now he becomes a sort of priest of the mysteries. So in the next scene, in the brightly lit ballroom, we have Mephistopheles uncomfortably waiting around in the lobby of this theater while all the theater goers are coming in, and he's waiting for Faust to return with the shades of Paris and Helen, whom he has promised the emperor to deliver as a show in front of an audience. Let's take a look at this. I just have one image from it here. And here's what the theater looks like. And this is exactly how Goethe describes it. They're all you can see all the people gathered there. Oh, and in the scene, before we get to that, in the scene, brightly lit ballroom, people are coming up to Mephistopheles asking him for things that will cure their ailments. One woman comes up to him and says, I have all these freckles in the summertime. And he says, here, put on some of this ointment. So he basically invents women's makeup. So that's the next invention, the next media invention. And then other people come up to him as he's waiting impatiently for Faust to return from the mothers. He's like, where the hell is he? I'm tired of giving these people favors. So then in the next scene, which is the Hall of Chivalry, dim illumination, which is what we see here in the illustration, where the courtiers are all gathered in front of a stage with Doric columns in the back, and it's open, and you see Paris lying there on the stage, and then Helen. So what he does is he comes back now with the magical power to resurrect the shades of Paris and Helen. And basically, Goethe here is already anticipating the cult of the movie star. That's what this is. All these people are gathered in the audience, and they're awed. They're like, oh my God, the men are like, Helen is so beautiful. And the women are like, Paris, he's so lovely. And Paris is kind of a lounge lizard. You can see him here lying on the steps. He wasn't worth much as a character. And it really is anticipating here the cult of the movie star. Goethe has already foreseen it. Or in a more broad sense, the cult of the celebrity that does not unfold until the 20th century. Before that, there had been the cult of the hero. And Daniel Borstein, in his book The Image, makes a distinction between the cult of the hero on the one hand and the celebrity on the other. And he says the hero is known, the Napoleon, the Beethoven, the Goethe, they're known for achieving great things. And their fame becomes more and more famous with time, whereas the celebrity is famous for being famous, for doing mediatized non-events, and the celebrity becomes actually less and less famous over time, which is generally true, except that when I read this, I was writing my book, Dead Celebrities, Living Icons, and Borstein completely missed certain types of celebrities who become more famous over time, not less, such as James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley. So he's completely missed the cult of the dead celebrity, which those people are still around today. Even 20-year-olds know who they are. Whereas ask your parents what their celebrities were in their time, and you'll get some very obscure names. How many people today remember Tiffany from the shopping malls, and Britney Spears, and these idiots that were famous in their time, but they're not famous anymore. All right, so that's the end of Act 1, and we will leave it there as we move into Faust Part 2, Act 2, for some more antics of Faust and Mephistopheles.